and welcome to another history special. And today I'm in Braintree. I'm going to try and locate some of the old Gants that used to exist in the town, along with one or two other back streets as well. Now, I came to Braintree to make a video a few months ago, and I discovered Osborne's Gant, and purely by chance I found a couple more. And so this video is all about locating those old Gants, those old back streets, those old walkways, and trying to discover a little more about them. The word Gant comes from the Flemish word gang, meaning a corridor. The Flemish settlers came here in the mid-1550s. They were weavers by trade, and they set up thriving businesses in Braintree and Coggeshall and other towns in the region. But the name Gant has survived. Now, my research tells me there's about 7 or 8, but I've actually found 11. So I'm going to try and find all those Gants in this video, or certainly as many as I can. I've done a little research as to where they are. The first one is just ahead of me. This is called the Hilly Gant. It is slightly hilly, but it used to be known as Hand Gant. There used to be 3 pubs here in the 16th century, and they were notorious. And this was a rather unpleasant part of Braintree. It got renamed as the Hilly Gant after the Reverend John Hills. Well, he was the rector of St Michael's Church. That's the churchyard I've just walked through. And it's quite an interesting little thoroughfare. You can actually see why it's the word corridor. The words, because it's like a corridor. But right at the very end is the old cell. Now this is where it's called the Braintree Cage. It was built as an overnight lockup for the restraints of the drunken disorderly. It was in use from 1840 to 1875, and still got the old door on the front. But it's 16 feet long, about 6 feet wide, and after that, after 1875, it was used by the 12th Essex Volunteer Rifles as an ammunition store, and they used it until about 1911. Just at the other end of the Hilly Gant is a supermarket car park, and at the other end is another of these old medieval back streets. This particular thoroughfare or passageway, it's called Iron Style. I think it used to go round to the right of where I'm walking now. There's another little alleyway that goes around behind this building on the right. But I actually walked through this last time in my last video, and I didn't actually realise that this was one of the old Gants of Braintree. It's not labelled up as a Gant, but it's classed as a Gant because it is one of the old passageways of Braintree. Not all of them have the word Gant in their name. Some are literally just the old walkways at the back of what was the old town. But I've walked now into the market square, and just off of the market square is another of Braintree's old back streets. This one is called Market Street. It's formerly Hyde Lane, otherwise known as Workhouse Lane. I'm not sure which part is the old thoroughfare. Perhaps this section, this undercover section, might indicate that walkway. I'm not quite sure. But even though this area of Braintree has undergone some redevelopment in recent years, you can still get a feel of the old back streets, and perhaps an idea of how it might have looked in medieval times from looking at pictures of York or Lincoln and the old back streets there. But this is really rather interesting walking through here. But one of the more interesting ones is Bailey's Gant. I did walk through that a couple of times on my last video, and it's very reminiscent of a corridor. it's enclosed and it's very narrow, just like the Hilly Gant. And it's just up ahead here. The top of New Street leads into the High Street. This is an area that I covered in my last video. But just here on the right is Bailey's Gant, leads up to the newly built George Yard shopping centre, and this really is a narrow corridor. It's quite interesting walking through it. Quite a few towns and cities around the country have narrow passageways in between the buildings. And there's quite a number in London and other places that I've visited, and I'm sure you've come across a few as well. Not sure why it's called Bailey's Gant, but the building behind me here might indicate perhaps it might have been a pub or something here, or a shop, and the shopkeeper might have been called Bailey. I'm not quite sure. I haven't been able to find that out, but it's still quite fun to walk through it. There we go. This is Bailey's Gant, and across the way is another of the old thoroughfares. It's next to what is now Costa's Coffee. It probably used to be a coaching inn at one stage, looking at the or a pub, looking at the archway. It's called Horn Yard, and there's some cobbles on the ground just where I'm walking. But you get a sense of the age of the thoroughfare here, the roadway. It looks like the building behind me hasn't changed in hundreds of years. It could easily be a film set which hardly requires any dressing at all. It's quite interesting. But you do find snippets of towns and cities where time has just stood still, and they're absolutely fascinating to see. And I really hope these old thoroughfares are preserved, not just in Braintree, but in other parts of the country as well. Now I'm just going to walk up past the bank here, up into Bank Street, and go down through another of the old passageways. This one's really narrow, and it's called Ironmonger Lane. I'll actually walk through this in my last video, but I didn't actually realise this wasn't actually a Gant. There we go. And it is rather narrow, and it comes out, and there's a sign behind me which says Ironmonger Lane. And around the corner is the best street name probably in the whole of England, and it's called Pig's Head and the Pottage Pot Gant. Isn't that absolutely brilliant name for a thoroughfare? Pig's Head in the Pottage Pot Gant. Really is quite amazing how they come up with these sort of names, but it's actually derived through history. Used to be deeds dating from 1753 referred to the corridor named Dog's Head in the Porridge Pot, and it's obviously changed its name slightly to Pig's Head in the Pottage Pot Gant, which is quite interesting. So there we go. But there's another thoroughfare just opposite, and I'm pretty sure that this one might well be Leatherworkers Gant. It's not labelled up at all, so I'm not quite sure. It's the only one I haven't been able to actually locate out of the 11 that I've found so far. It's quite possible that is the name of the Gant. Just walk through here again and show you. As you can see, it goes up to the Pig's Head and the Pottage Pot Gant, which I'm assuming is the little thoroughfare that goes left right ahead of me. So whether this was a continuation of that Gant or this is a different Gant, I'm not really sure. Let's say Leatherworkers Gant, I haven't been able to find out. This is Little Square, and just on the corner here is Leather Lane, formerly Stony Lane, and this is another of the old thoroughfares of Braintree. And next to it is Osborne's Gant. And I walked down Osborne's Gant in my last video, and it's quite nice. You know, you've got the modern building on one side and a slightly older building on the other with wooden panelling on the side. Obviously been here for several hundred years. So I would guess that this particular area probably had more passageways than it does now. It has been altered, and there are new modern buildings which have gone up on the outside. But there we go, Leather Lane, formerly Stony Lane. So I'll walk down here. Again, modern buildings either side, but these have probably been built either side of the old thoroughfare. Whether it was this wide a few hundred years ago when the Flemish weavers were here, I'm not sure. It may have been a lot narrower, because buildings back in those days were generally a lot narrower in between buildings. But walking round to the left is another, well, there's two thoroughfares, back streets. Tofts Walk and School Walk is also down here as well. And again, this has been heavily modified for the building of a new supermarket. So that's Tofts Walk just past on my left. I'm walking down here. This is School Walk, and it comes onto the back of the former Manor Street School, which is now Braintree's museum. And again, I covered that in my previous video. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. And there we go. This goes down into School Walk. Maybe this is part of School Walk that I'm on right now. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, this is School Walk. Leads to the back of the former St Mary's School. How cool is that? Isn't it fun exploring back streets of towns and cities? You just never know what you're going to find, both architecturally and historically as well. Really rather interesting. So there's my my walk around the Gants and the old backstreet passageways of Braintree. There's one which I haven't covered, and I know it exists in Braintree. It's called Bird and Hand Gant, and I believe it's somewhere between the Cressing Road and the Coggeshall Road. It's about, I suppose, a quarter or half a mile outside the town. But all the ones that are inside the town I just lead off of Little Square, Market Square. This is the old medieval centre of Braintree. And I think Braintree's very lucky to have some of these old thoroughfares still in existence, even though they have been changed over the years with more modern buildings being built either side. And perhaps some of those walkways, like School Walk, which I'm on at the moment, is now sort of turned into quite a larger road. So yeah, the Gants of Braintree. Absolutely fascinating. But there we go. This is where I end this video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget you can see these videos earlier on Patreon, and there's more content on my channel as well for you to watch, including a previous video filmed here in Braintree. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you for another history special very shortly.